My name is Aubrey Finch. I'm at my desk in the finance office in downtown Richmond, Virginia, wrapping up a quarterly report when my phone lights up. It's Mom. I pick up. Her voice is soft, reasonable, like she's suggesting something completely fair. Aubrey Tyler just got married. We've been thinking it would be nice to use $100,000 from Grandma Evelyn's trust fund to give him and his wife a real honeymoon in Monaco. You're settled now. Good job, your own place. Everything's stable. Tyler's just starting out with a family. It's the right time for us to help him get that boost. Family prioritizes together, don't we? Dad's voice comes in from the background, calm and warm. She's right, honey. It's only fair. We're all in this together. The way they say it, casual, confident, like the money is already theirs, sends a quiet chill through me. $100,000. Money Grandma Evelyn locked away specifically for me. They talk about it as if my life being stable means I don't count anymore. I stay silent for a beat, then answer evenly. I understand. Don't worry, it'll be taken care of. Mom sounds relieved, almost proud. We knew you'd see it our way. You always do. The call ends. I set the phone down slowly. They think I'm agreeing. They have no idea I'm done playing the reliable one. If you've ever felt your own family quietly decide your future doesn't matter as much as someone else's, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story is just getting started. The call ended and the office suddenly felt too quiet. 2 years ago, everything shifted in a way I still hadn't fully processed. After Dad's investment failed and they lost their house, I let them move into mine. I told myself it was temporary. I packed my things and rented a small apartment across town so they could have space. I thought I was helping the family. They never once said thank you. Instead, they started acting like the house had always been theirs. Around that same time, a letter arrived from attorney Rebecca Klein. The envelope was heavy, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. Inside was a single page, polite but firm. It said my parents had visited her office asking about early withdrawal from the trust fund Grandmother Evelyn had set up for me. The request had been denied because there was no signature from the beneficiary, me. The letter didn't accuse anyone. It just informed me as required by the terms. At the time, I hadn't dug deeper. I called Attorney Klein, voice shaking a little. Ms. Klein, what exactly does this mean? She spoke calmly, professionally. The trust is structured so that no one can access the funds without your handwritten signature. That's the rule. No exceptions. I thanked her and hung up. Back then, I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they were just worried about money. Maybe they didn't understand the terms. I filed the letter away and tried to forget about it. But today, with Mom's words still echoing in my head, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I drove home early, the Richmond traffic a dull hum around me. In my apartment, I pulled the old folder from the bottom drawer of my desk. The papers smelled faintly of dust and time. I started reading, really reading for the first time. The trust document was long, full of legal language, but certain lines stood out like they were written in bold. The beneficiary, Aubrey Finch, may request a distribution only for clearly defined purposes, such as starting a business or other significant personal investment. Any such request must be made in writing signed by the beneficiary's own hand. No third party, including family members, guardians, or representatives, shall have authority to initiate or approve any withdrawal regardless of stated reason or relationship. The trustee shall deny any unauthorized attempt and may take appropriate steps to protect the corpus of the trust. I sat back staring at the page. Grandmother Evelyn hadn't predicted every detail. She hadn't named my parents or Tyler, but she had seen enough. She knew how things worked in our family, how Tyler always got the new clothes, the better schools, the endless second chances, while I was expected to manage without complaint. She had built a wall around the money she left me, not out of distrust in me, but out of care. I thought about the times she would pull me aside when I was little, slip a few dollars into my hand, and whisper, "This is just for you, sweetheart. Keep it safe." I never understood why she said it like that. Now I did. My throat tightened. Gratitude for her foresight mixed with a deep, quiet ache. My family hadn't changed. If anything, they had become more comfortable expecting me to give. I closed the folder, hands steady now. This wasn't just about money. It was about who I was allowed to be. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the streetlights coming on one by one across Richmond. The city felt distant, separate from the storm building inside me. I thought about grandmother Evelyn again. She had passed when I was 22, leaving behind not just the trust, but a quiet strength I hadn't fully appreciated until now. She had always been the one who listened without judgment, who saw me as more than the responsible daughter. She had never favored Tyler openly, but she had noticed the imbalance. And she had acted on it in the only way she could, by protecting what was mine. I returned to the desk and opened the folder once more. I read the clauses slowly, letting each one sink in. The language was cold and precise, but behind it was something warm, her intention to give me a future that wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations. I pictured her sitting at her own desk years earlier, consulting with lawyers, insisting on these protections. She hadn't been dramatic about it. She had simply been thorough. That was her way. A small smile tugged at my lips despite everything. "Thank you, Grandma." But the smile faded quickly. The ache returned when I thought of Mom and Dad. They had raised me to believe family came first, that sacrifice was part of love. Yet their version of family always seemed to mean my sacrifice for theirs. Tyler had been the golden child from the beginning. New toys, new opportunities, endless praise. I had learned early to step back, to make room, to not ask for too much. I told myself it was maturity. I told myself it was love. Now, looking at the trust document, I saw it differently. It wasn't maturity. It was conditioning. I set the papers aside and leaned back in the chair. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. Outside, the city continued its evening routine, cars passing, lights flickering on in windows. Life went on. But inside me, something had shifted. Not dramatically, not with anger or tears. Just a quiet realization. The trust wasn't a safety net. It was a boundary. Grandmother Evelyn had given me one clear line in the sand, and for the first time I was ready to stand behind it. I stood up, turned off the desk lamp, and walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water and drank it slowly. The coolness steadied me. Tomorrow would come soon enough. And when it did, I would be ready. The next morning arrived with a fresh layer of routine. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee in hand, reviewing emails when the phone rang again. It was Mom. Her voice was still gentle, almost coaxing. "Aubrey, we went ahead and booked the flights, business class, and the resort in Monaco. It all adds up to about $100,000. Tyler is so excited, you know how much this means to him." I kept my tone even. "I understand. Tomorrow morning, everything will be sorted out." She paused, then added with a soft laugh, "We knew you'd see it our way. You're the sensible one." The call ended. I set the phone down and stared at the screen for a moment. The words lingered, not loud but persistent. A few hours later, another call came through. This time, the name on the screen was Tyler. I answered. "Hi, sis," he said, voice low, a mix of plea and edge. "Look, I know you've got extra cash sitting there. You don't need it the way we do right now. Honeymoon is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Just help me out a little, okay?" There it was, straight from him. Not Mom or Dad speaking for him, Tyler himself. The sentence landed harder than I expected. It wasn't just entitlement. It was learned. He had watched them treat my efforts as something disposable for years, and now he spoke the same language. I didn't raise my voice. I heard you, Tyler. Then I ended the call. I sat still for a long minute. The apartment was quiet except for the faint tick of the clock. Old wounds surfaced not with rage but with clarity. Tyler hadn't just been favored. He had been taught that my stability was a resource to draw from. I picked up my phone again and texted Jessica. They're pushing for the trust fund money for Tyler's honeymoon. He even called me himself and said I have extra cash I don't need. The reply came almost immediately, a phone call. Jessica's voice was firm but warm. Aubrey, listen to me. Don't let them pull this guilt card again. Grandma Evelyn set that fund aside for you, for your future, not theirs. You've carried enough. Use it the way she intended. I leaned against the counter, listening to her words settle. Jessica had been there through everything, the late nights when I worked 2 jobs to buy the house. The quiet moments when I wondered why my family never seemed to notice. She had never judged my choices, only reminded me I had the right to make them. I know, I said finally. I'm trying to figure out how to handle this without it turning into a bigger mess. She didn't push. You don't have to decide everything today. Just remember, you're not the villain for protecting what's yours. We talked a little longer about nothing important. Her weekend plans, a funny story from work. It was the kind of conversation that reminded me life existed outside this family loop. After we hung up, I walked to the living room window. The afternoon light slanted across the floor. I thought about the trust fund again, not as a weapon, but as a choice Grandmother Evelyn had left me. Tyler's words replayed once more. You don't need it the way we do. I didn't feel anger this time, just a steady resolve. I had spent years making room for everyone else. Now there was no more room left to give. The realization settled slowly. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was like a knot finally loosening after years of being pulled tight. I thought about all the times I had stepped aside, giving up weekends to help Dad with paperwork, letting Tyler borrow money for his car, accepting smaller portions of attention, because family comes first. I had convinced myself it was strength. Now I saw it for what it was, habit. I sat down on the couch and pulled my knees up. The room was warm from the sun, but I felt a different kind of warmth inside, something solid, something mine. Grandmother Evelyn hadn't given me a fortune to spend. She had given me permission to choose. I thought about what that choice could look like. Not revenge, not punishment, just freedom. I stood up and walked to my desk. I opened my laptop and started looking at business licenses and startup costs. The numbers were small compared to the trust, but they were real. They were mine. For the first time in a long time, the future felt like it belonged to me alone. I closed the laptop and looked around the apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet. It was mine. No one had ever asked me to give it up, or share it, or justify its existence. I thought about the honeymoon in Monaco. The flights, the resort, the luxury, all paid for with money that wasn't theirs to spend. And yet, they had booked it anyway, assuming I would cover the bill. The assumption stung, but it also clarified something. They had stopped seeing me as a person. I was a function, the reliable one, the stable one, the one who fixes things. I walked to the kitchen and poured another cup of coffee. The steam rose slowly. I watched it curl and disappear. I didn't need to shout or cry or confront them right now. I just needed to stop saying yes. The trust fund wasn't a prize to win or lose. It was a line drawn by someone who loved me enough to say, "This is yours. Keep it." I finished the coffee and set the cup down. Tomorrow morning, everything would be sorted out. But not in the way they expected. That same afternoon, I picked up the phone and dialed the trust department of the bank. The line connected quickly and a calm voice answered. "Trust Services, this is Emily speaking. How may I assist you?" I gave my full name and account details. "I'm calling about a recent withdrawal request on my trust fund. I need to confirm the status." Emily typed for a moment. "1 second, Ms. Finch. I see the application here. It was submitted yesterday by your mother with supporting documents. I waited. She continued, professional but careful. The request has been denied. The signature on the form does not match the specimen we have on file for you. Under the trust terms, any distribution requires your handwritten authorization. Without that, we cannot proceed. I exhaled slowly. So the funds are still intact? Yes, ma'am. The account remains unchanged. We've placed a note in the file regarding the unauthorized attempt as per internal policy. We'll also send an official letter of denial to the address on record. I hesitated for half a second. Please make sure the letter goes to my house in Richmond, the one on file as my primary residence. Emily confirmed the address. That's the one we have. Certified mail signature required. It should arrive in 2 to 3 business days. Thank you, Emily. That's all I needed. We ended the call. I set the phone down on the table. The apartment was quiet, sunlight slanting through the blinds in thin golden bars. The denial wasn't a surprise. I had known the rules since yesterday. But hearing it spoken out loud, calm, final, without drama, made it real in a different way. The note in the file, the official letter. These weren't threats. They were simply facts. Paper trails. Records. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it standing at the sink. My mind moved steadily through the next steps. The letter would reach the house. Mom and Dad would open it. They would read the words denied and unauthorized. They would see my name listed as the one who refused. Not as the villain, as the owner. I thought about the signature they had submitted. Not mine. Close, maybe. Careful. But not mine. The realization didn't bring anger. It brought something cooler, clearer. They had crossed a line they thought was invisible. Now the line was documented. I returned to the living room and sat on the couch. The afternoon light had shifted, longer shadows stretching across the floor. I thought about the house in Richmond, the one I had bought after years of overtime, careful saving, and saying no to things I wanted so I could say yes to security. They lived there now. They walked through rooms I had painted, slept in beds I had paid for, used the kitchen I had stocked. And they had assumed that because they were there, everything in it, including my future, belonged to them too. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through contacts until I found Attorney Klein's number. I didn't call yet. I just looked at it. The letter would arrive soon. When it did, the conversation would change. I wasn't going to call them first. I wasn't going to explain. I was going to let the paper speak. I set the phone down and leaned back. The couch was soft under me. For the first time in days, my breathing felt even. The bank had done its job. Now it was time for the rest of the truth to arrive at the door. A few days later, the letters arrived. 2 certified envelopes sat on the kitchen counter when I got home. One from the bank, the other from Attorney Klein. I opened them in order, hands steady. The bank's letter was brief and formal. The withdrawal request had been formally denied. The signature did not match the authorized specimen. The trust remained unchanged. No further action would be taken without my direct handwritten approval. A copy of the denial was attached, along with a note that the matter had been flagged internally. The second letter from Attorney Klein was slightly longer. It restated the denial and reminded the recipients of the trust terms. Only the beneficiary could initiate distributions. Any unauthorized attempt was a violation of the agreement. The letter closed with a polite suggestion to contact the office if clarification was needed. It was professional, unemotional, and final. I placed both letters side by side on the table. The house was quiet. I didn't need to read them again. The words had done their job. The phone started buzzing shortly after. First came voicemails. I let them accumulate before listening. Mom's voice cracked on the first one. Aubrey, what is this letter? The bank says the request was denied. Why would they do that? We're in a terrible position now. How could you let this happen to the family? Her tone shifted between tears and accusation. She repeated the same phrases, voice rising each time. We trusted you. We thought you understood. Tyler's honeymoon is ruined because of this. I skipped to the next. Dad's message was shorter, angrier. Aubrey, this is ridiculous. You've made a mess of everything. We're the ones dealing with the consequences. Call us back and fix this. Then Tyler's text messages came in a stream. Sis, I can't believe you let this happen. The resort canceled everything. We lost the deposit. I didn't think you'd actually do this to us. Another one, I thought we were family. Guess I was wrong. I read them all. No tears came. No rush of guilt. Just a deep, steady ache that had been there for years, now fully exposed. I sat on the couch with the phone in my lap. The screen glowed in the dim room. Each message felt like a small stone added to a pile I had carried too long. I thought about the years of quiet concessions, the times I said yes when I wanted to say no, the times I swallowed disappointment so they could have what they wanted. I had done it because I believed it was love. Now I saw it clearly. It wasn't love. It was expectation. They had expected me to bend. Always. And when I didn't, they called it betrayal. I listened to the voicemails again, slower this time. Mom's crying, Dad's anger, Tyler's disappointment. Each one tried to pull me back into the old role, the fixer, the giver, the one who makes it right. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't text. I turned the phone face down on the table and walked to the window. The street outside was calm. Cars passed. Lights flickered on in neighboring houses. Life continued without drama. Inside me, something settled. The pain was real, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was familiar, like an old scar finally acknowledged. I had spent so long trying to avoid hurting them that I had hurt myself instead. Now the truth was on paper. It was in voicemails. It was in messages. They could no longer pretend it didn't exist. I didn't need to shout or explain or justify. The letters had spoken for me. I walked back to the couch and sat down. My breathing was even. My hands were still. For the first time in years, I felt the weight begin to lift, not all at once, but piece by piece. I wasn't going to fix this for them. I was going to let them feel what it was like when I stopped. The decision wasn't born from anger. It came from clarity. I had carried their expectations long enough. It was time to set them down. The apartment felt different after that. Smaller perhaps, but also more mine. The walls, the furniture, the silence, they belonged to me, now not to the role I had played for so long. I thought about the next steps, not with fear, but with purpose. The letters had opened the door. The voicemails had confirmed the path. I didn't need to rush. I just needed to keep walking. I picked up the letters again and placed them in a drawer. They weren't weapons. They were proof. Proof that I had the right to say no. Proof that my future was not negotiable. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. The bed was made. The room was tidy. Everything in its place. I lay down and stared at the ceiling. My mind was quiet, not racing. For the first time in a long time, sleep came easily. The next morning, I woke up without the usual knot in my stomach. The phone had not rung overnight. No new messages waited. I made coffee. I sat at the table. I looked out the window at the morning light. The ache was still there, but it was softer now. Manageable. Part of the past, not the present. I knew what came next. The conversation would happen eventually, but it would be on my terms, not theirs. I finished the coffee and rinsed the cup. The day ahead was ordinary. Work, errands, life. But it was mine, and that made all the difference. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the quiet of the apartment pressing in. Memories came without invitation. 4 years earlier, Dad had shown up at my door with Mom, faces drawn telling me about the failed investment. They had nowhere else to go. I opened the door wider. I moved out so they could stay. I thought it was what family did. I thought it would be short-term. I never imagined they would settle in so comfortably. The house I had bought with my own savings became theirs. They used the garage for Dad's old tools, the backyard for Mom's garden, the guest room for Tyler when he visited. They never offered rent. They never asked if I was okay living in a rented one-bedroom. They just expected me to keep carrying the load. I turned onto my side, the sheets cool against my skin. Doubt crept in. Was this too harsh? Was I punishing them for something they didn't fully understand? The letters had arrived. The voicemails had played. They knew the money was off limits. Yet the messages kept coming, pleading, angry, disappointed. Each one pulled at old strings. I sat up in the dark and rubbed my eyes. The clock glowed 2:17 a.m. I thought about the years of small sacrifices, skipping vacations to help with bills, working extra hours so Tyler could have the latest phone, smiling when they praised him while I stood in the background. I had told myself it was temporary. I had told myself it was love. It wasn't love. It was a pattern. The pattern had to stop. I reached for my phone and scrolled to Attorney Klein's number. The office was closed, but I left a message. This is Aubrey Finch. I need to discuss an eviction notice for the property in Richmond. Please call me first thing in the morning. I set the phone down and lay back. The doubt didn't disappear, but it became smaller. It was no longer the loudest voice in the room. The next morning, Attorney Klein called at 8:45. Good morning, Aubrey. I got your message. What's going on? I explained the situation without emotion. The trust denial, the letters, the voicemails, the years of living in my house without contribution. I want them out. 30 days as required by Virginia law. She didn't hesitate. I can prepare the notice today. It will be formal on letterhead with all the required language. You'll need to serve it via certified mail with return receipt. I'll include the exact deadline, 30 days from delivery. After that, if they don't leave, we can file for unlawful detainer in court. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Do it. We ended the call. Within an hour, she emailed the draft. I reviewed it carefully. The language was clear, legal, impersonal. It didn't accuse. It simply stated the facts. The property belonged to me. They had no lease, 30 days to vacate. I printed it, signed where needed, and drove to the post office. I sent it certified mail, signature required. The clerk handed me the receipt. I folded it and put it in my wallet. The letter was on its way. I called Jessica on the drive back. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, how are you holding up? I just sent the eviction notice. 30 days. A pause. Wow. Okay. That's huge. I know. Part of me still feels guilty. But I can't keep doing this. You shouldn't. You've given enough. Come over tonight if you want. We can go through the paperwork together, make sure everything's in order. I agreed. That evening, I drove to her place. She had coffee ready and spread the documents on her dining table. We read through the eviction notice line by line. She asked questions. I answered. She pointed out a small detail in the date format. I noted it for Attorney Klein. When we finished, she looked at me. You're doing the right thing. This isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. I nodded. I know. It just hurts to have to draw them so hard. She reached over and squeezed my hand. It does. But you're not alone in this. I left her place feeling lighter. Not free yet, but closer. Back home, I placed the certified mail receipt in the same drawer as the bank letters. The pieces were in place. The clock ticked. The house was still. 30 days. I went to bed without checking my phone. For the first time in years, the silence felt like peace. I woke up the next morning with the receipt still in the drawer, the notice on its way. The day felt different, not because anything had changed yet, but because I had finally acted. The doubt that had kept me awake was quieter now. It hadn't vanished, but it no longer controlled the conversation in my head. I made breakfast simple things: eggs, toast, coffee. I ate slowly, thinking about the house in Richmond, the one I had bought after years of overtime and careful saving, the one I had left behind so they could have a place. I pictured the rooms, the furniture I had chosen, the walls I had painted. They had lived there for 4 years without ever acknowledging that it was my effort that made it possible. I finished eating and rinsed the dishes. The water ran warm over my hands. I thought about the garden Mom had planted in the backyard, the tools Dad kept in the garage, the way Tyler used the guest room whenever he wanted. None of it had been offered back. None of it had been appreciated. I dried my hands and walked to the living room. The apartment was small, but it was mine. No one had ever asked me to give it up. No one had ever assumed it was theirs to use. I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. I started looking at rental listings in Richmond, places I might need if things escalated. The thought was practical, not fearful. I wasn't running. I was preparing. The eviction notice would arrive soon. They would read it. They would call. They would message. But this time, I wouldn't answer. I closed the laptop and stood up. The morning light filled the room. I felt the weight of 4 years begin to shift, not gone, but moving. I had carried it long enough. Now it was time to put it down. 30 days passed quietly. The eviction notice had arrived at the house. They had signed for it. I knew because the return receipt came back to me in the mail. No phone calls followed from them. No more voicemails. Just silence. On the 31st day, the court officer went to the property in Richmond. I wasn't there. Attorney Klein handled the coordination. She texted me a brief update: eviction completed. They vacated without resistance. Belongings placed in storage per court order. I stared at the message for a long time. No triumph. No relief. Just a quiet finality. Mom and Dad moved to a small apartment on the outskirts of Richmond. 1-bedroom ground floor in a building that had seen better days. Mom started working part-time at a local supermarket, stocking shelves in the early mornings. Dad's back pain returned worse than before. The stress had aggravated it. He spent most days resting, unable to take on much work. They lived simply now. No garden, no garage, no extra rooms. Tyler and his wife had to cancel the remaining plans for Monaco. They lost the deposit and faced cancellation fees. They stayed in their small rental downtown, cutting back on everything. No more business class flights. No resort. Just the reality of starting over without the cushion they had counted on. The bank sent a final notice about the unauthorized attempt. There were minor fees for processing the invalid request. An internal review was noted in the file. Nothing dramatic. No headlines. Just small consequences that added up over time. I didn't gloat. I didn't call to check on them. I simply let the distance grow. I contacted Attorney Klein again, this time to request a distribution from the trust. I wrote the purpose clearly: to start a financial consulting business. I signed the form by hand. The funds transferred in a few days, $100,000, clean and legal. I found a small office space near downtown Richmond. Nothing fancy. A single room with a window overlooking the street, a desk, a chair, and a filing cabinet. I bought a used computer and set up a basic website. I reached out to a few contacts from my old job. Word spread slowly. Clients started coming. Small businesses needing tax advice. Individuals planning retirement. I worked long hours, but they were my hours. The money didn't make me rich overnight. It gave me a start. I paid rent on the office. I bought supplies. I saved the rest. It was mine to manage, mine to grow, mine to keep. Nights became different. I slept without waiting for the phone to ring. No more waking up to check for messages. No more bracing for the next request. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I met Jessica for coffee one Saturday. She asked how I was doing. Better, I said. Not perfect, but better. She smiled. "You look lighter?" I was. The ache from those years hadn't disappeared completely. It lingered like a faint scar. But it no longer controlled my days. I walked along the James River sometimes in the evenings. The water moved steadily, unhurried. I thought about grandmother Evelyn. She hadn't left me wealth for show. She had left me choice. The choice to say no. The choice to build something of my own. I thought about Mom, Dad, and Tyler. They were struggling now. I knew that. Part of me still cared. Part of me always would. But caring didn't mean giving everything away. It didn't mean erasing my own life to make theirs easier. Protecting myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Cutting ties after years of being used wasn't cruel. It was survival. I had learned that love without boundaries isn't love. It's obligation. I had chosen freedom instead. The office grew slowly. Clients returned. Referrals came. I hired a part-time assistant after 6 months. The business wasn't huge, but it was mine. The income covered the rent, the bills, and left room to save. I bought a small used car. I took a weekend trip alone. I laughed more easily. The phone rarely rang with family calls anymore. When it did, I let it go to voicemail. I listened sometimes out of habit. The messages were shorter now, less accusatory, more resigned. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The future wasn't something I owed them. It was something I earned, and for the first time it felt like it belonged to me. I stood at the window of my new office one afternoon watching people walk below. The city moved on. Life continued. So did I. With boundaries. With peace. With my own name on the door. I thought about the path that led here. The years of giving more than I had. The slow realization that I deserved to keep some things for myself. The moment I decided to stop apologizing for existing. Grandmother Evelyn had given me more than money. She had given me a reminder that my life was my own. I closed the window blinds and sat back at my desk. The day was ending. I had a client meeting tomorrow. A proposal to finish. A future to build. I turned off the light and locked the door. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one. I walked to my car, keys in hand. The engine started smoothly. I drove home through the familiar streets of Richmond. The apartment waited quiet and mine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next demand. I felt like I was home.